Hello, gentlemen. Really hope that you can hear me. If you can't, then we have a great deal of problems, don't we now? I may sound a tiny bit out of breath and may sniff occasionally because I have just been out on a very pleasant walk. I've been trying to have a walk every single day of October. It's gone quite well so far. COVID has been a real pain in the ass, means I can do like half of what I could do before, but I'm getting there, recovering slowly. If you've read the title, and honestly, I don't think many of you have, I have that much faith in my audience. I think that you will see that we are continuing this glorious reading of Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. I really like this book. It is horrifying and terrifying. Weak redcoat lungs. Yeah, my lungs have never been particularly good, unfortunately. It's a problem that runs in the family. A lot better than my poor dear mother, though, who operates on about 1/4 of both her lungs. But anyway, yes, we are going to be continuing reading this. There is going to be some that I'm going to skip. What I forgot about this book is that rather a large portion of it is dry diagrams. Did I skip past them? Ah, yes, here they all are. A whole bunch of variables, introduction to the theory of economic shock testing. I think I should summarize this just by saying that this is for those who weren't here last time, or for those just watching the VOD, this whole section is really about controlling the economic system and getting it into a pliant state that has all the expected outputs that universal controllers input. And this whole load of stuff is honestly pretty obsolete. The basic mechanics and mathematics of it still work perfectly fine, but the thing is that this was written in 1986, or it was published in 1986, I think. And a lot of the economic warfare that it describes is now done entirely by computers, the stock market, etc. This is not outdated, but all of this is a staggering predictor of where we are right now, and it pretty much tracks perfectly. So I thought I would start at this section here, Introduction to Economic Amplifiers. Also, I believe that my wonderful economist friend is going to be around later on. Second, I will. Live now. Point and ping me and ping. Oh. Oh. Math, mo weakness. Yes, it's depressing how much of this stuff is completely unknown to the average person nowadays. But I thought, as I said, I will start at Introduction to Economic Amplifiers. Economic amplifiers are the active components of economic engineering. A basic characteristic of any amplifier, mechanical, electrical, or economic, is that it receives an input control signal and delivers energy from an independent energy source to a specified output terminal in a predictable relationship, that of the input signal. The simplest form of an economic amplifier is a device called advertising, aka that thing that I specifically have uBlock Origin installed to block at absolutely any opportunity. If you don't have uBlock Origin or something similar installed in this day and age, you are an idiot, and I have nothing but contempt for you. If a person is spoken to by a TV advertiser as if he were a 12-year-old, then, due to suggestibility, he will, with a certain probability, respond or react to that suggestion with the uncritical response of a 12-year-old, and will reach into his economic reservoir and deliver its energy to buy that product on impulse when he passes it in the store. This is Marketing 101. This is taught in marketing classes all over the world. Anybody says this is a conspiracy theory, tell them that average marketing courses are conspiracy theories as well. An economic amplifier may have several inputs and output. Its response might be instantaneous or delayed. Its circuit symbol might be a rotary switch if its options are exclusive, qualitative, go or no-go. Or it might have its parametric input/output relationships specified by a matrix, with internal energy sources represented. Whatever its form might be, its purpose is to govern the flow of energy from a source to an output sink in direct relationship to an input control signal. For this reason, it is called an active circuit element or component. Economic amplifiers fall into classes called strategies, and, in comparison with electronic amplifiers, the specific internal functions of an economic amplifier are called logistical instead of electrical. Therefore, economic amplifiers not only deliver power gain, but also, in effect, are used to cause changes in the economic circuitry. In the design of an economic amplifier, we must have some idea of at least 5 functions, which are 1. The available input signals, 2. The desired output control objectives, 3. The strategic objective, 4. The available economic power sources, 5. The logistical options. The process of defining and evaluating these factors and incorporating the economic amplifier into an economic system has been popularly called game theory. If somebody ever talks about game theory to you, you know they are a psychopath. Game theory is the realm of psychopaths and people who think they can reduce other people to numbers. The design of an economic amplifier begins with a specification of the power level of the output, which can range from personal to national. The second condition is accuracy of response, i.e., how accurately the output action is a function of the input commands. High gain combined with strong feedback helps to deliver the required precision. Most of the error will be put in the input data signal. As personal input data tends to be specified, while now national input data tends to be statistical. And all of this is just a short list of inputs. Who, what, when, where, why, how, who, when, etc. And general source of information, telephone taps, analysis of garbage. Hey, look, it's Garbage Raider. Surveillance, behavior of children in school. Why do you think so much of advertising is aimed towards children nowadays? Standard of living by food, shelter, clothing, transportation. Yep, soy milk lattes all around. Social contacts. This is probably the most high order item on this list in the modern age. Social contacts. Who you are talking to, telephone, family, friends, associates, members in organizations, political affiliation. This is why everybody wants your data, and there's no such thing as privacy any longer. Personal paper trail, personal buying habits, i.e. personal consumer preferences, checking accounts, credit card purchases. I really dislike having to use PayPal for everything, but I kind of have to use PayPal for everything. But yeah, checking accounts, saving accounts, real estate, business, automobile, safety deposit at bank, stock market, liabilities, creditors, enemies, illegal loans, welfare, social security, USDA surplus food, doles, grants, subsidies. Principle of this ploy, the citizen will almost always make the collection of information easy if he can operate on the free sandwich principle of eat now and pay later. I remember a video that Louis Rossmann did a few months ago about how there was an incredibly popular TV that was coming out that was something like half price if you bought a model which had basically permission and override control to show you ads at any time. And it could do stuff like use its smart TV function to monitor the room, check how many people are in it, and individually personalize ads for every member of the family. And he said he was horribly disappointed and upset that this thing was selling like hotcakes and people loved it for an amazing deal when they were literally letting the equivalent of Big Brother into their homes with no comment and no contest and no understanding of those implications. Yeah, principle of this ploy, this is the definition of the free sandwich principle. Eat now and pay later. And of course, there's government services, government hate, Internal Revenue Service, OSHA, census, etc. I find it interesting they have OSHA there, because we all know how much we love being told what to do and how we're not being safe and how we're committing crimes by omission or all that kind of nonsense. Some of it is very important. A great deal of it is massive amounts of busy work. Other government sources, surveillance of US mail. This can be replaced with Facebook in this day and age. Strengths and weaknesses, activities, hospital records, psychiatric records. This is why I really hate a lot of the medical system. The last time I went for a checkup, I was handed a waiver that said, here, sign this so that we can sell your data. I obviously did not sign it, but judging from the reaction of the people that I handed it back to and said, no, I don't sign it, I think I was the only person who had ever not just glanced at it once, signed their name, and then forgotten about it completely. Of course, there's methods of coping, consumption of alcohol, consumption of drugs, entertainment, etc. You can also add burn, loot, murder onto this as well. That's definitely a method of coping in this day and age. Payment modus operandi, pay on time, telephone bills, energy purchases, water purchases, etc. Political sensitivity. Beliefs, contracts, positions, strengths/weaknesses, projects/activities. A whole bunch of this. I'm not going to read absolutely all of it. And the short list of outputs allocates opportunities, destroys opportunities, controls the economic. Again, it's one of those game theory things where all the inputs are categorized and then all the outputs are categorized. Your personal habits are just a number to these people. None of this makes your. The more I try, and this is actually interesting. The table of strategies. This was very good. Keep the public ignorant, less public organization, maintain access to control point for feedback, required reaction to outputs, preoccupation, lower defense, attack the family unit, control of the education of the young. That's a very big one that we are seeing come to fruition in a major way. Give less cash and more credit and doles, more self-indulgence and more data. Attack the privacy of the church. Destroy faith in this sort of government. That's a major one. Total conformity, computer programming simplicity, minimize the tax protest, from economic data, minimum enforcement problems. I'm not going to read every single one of these. Collapse of currency, destroy the faith of the American people in each other. We are definitely seeing that very farther on. Remember, 40 years ago, this was the goal. Think they've succeeded or not? You tell me. Pretty sure and certain they have. Here's the wonderful part. Diversion, the primary strategy. Experience has prevent that the simplest method of securing a silent weapon and gaining control of the public is to keep the public undisciplined and ignorant of the basic system principles on the one hand, while keeping them confused, disorganized, and distracted with matters of no real importance on the other hand. This is achieved by disengaging their minds, sabotaging their mental activities, providing a low-quality program of public education in mathematics, logic, systems design, and economics, and discouraging technical creativity. I think I read somewhere that something like 80% of all children, before they go into primary education, can take an IQ test and test as genius level IQ. By the time they're 18, that number drops to 2%. 80% go in as geniuses, 2% come out as geniuses. That should tell you all you need to know about the impact of the American or Western education system. Engaging their emotions, increasing their self-indulgence, and their indulgence in emotional and physical activities by unrelenting emotional affrontations and attacks. We call these microaggressions. Mental and emotional rape by ways of constant barrage of sex, violence, and wars in the media, especially the TV and the newspapers. This is why I really hate Coomers. Giving them what they desire in excess, junk food for thought, and depriving them of what they really need. Rewriting history and law and subjecting the public to the deviant creation, thus being able to shift their thinking from personal needs to highly fabricated outside priorities. What do you think all of those books in school that teach your 8-year-old how to have anal sex, what do you think those are for? It is literally the systematic destruction of your moral and ethical centers from the day you enter school to the day you leave. Again, 80% of children go into school testing as a genius level IQ. 2% leave. These preclude their interest in and discovery of the silent weapons of social automation technology. The general rule is that there is a profit in confusion. The more confusion, the more profit. Therefore, the best approach is to create problems and then offer solutions. This could have been copied practically word for word out of Thomas Sowell's The Vision of the Anointed. Division summary. Media. Keep the adult public attention diverted away from the real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance. Schools. Keep the young public ignorant of real mathematics, real economics, real lore, and real history. Yeah, that's I used to be involved in history education, and yeah, I got black-pilled on that pretty damn hard when I started to read more outsider sources of historical information. Anton Sutton, or is it Anthony Sutton? I can never remember. Like his series on the Soviet Union and the Skull and Crossbones organization, all that kind of stuff, and Thomas Sowell, etc. Those were all absolute eye openers. There's a couple of other things I should link in the Discord too. Entertainment. Keep the public entertainment below a 6th grade level. Remember how we all complained about how dumbed down the media is? Yeah, that's why. Work. Keep the public busy, 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 with no time to think, back on the farm with the other animals. I feel like reminding people that this is an official training manual. This is not a satire or anything. This was something the CIA printed. They wrote this kind of stuff back on the farm with the other animals. Yeah, you're an animal to these people. You are an animal to anybody in a 3-letter agency. You don't have autonomy. You are what they make you. And they believe they have the right to make you whatever they want. Consent, the primary victory. A silent weapon system operates upon data obtained from a docile public by legal but not always lawful force. Much information is made available to silent weapon systems programmers through the Internal Revenue Service. This information consists of the enforced delivery of well-organized data contained in federal and state tax forms, collected, assembled, and submitted by slave labor provided by taxpayers and employers. 80% of people think that their jobs are useless and don't contribute to the greater society, by the way. Furthermore, the number of such forms submitted to the IRS is a useful indicator of public consent, an important factor in strategic decision-making. Heal the 16th Amendment. Other data sources are given in the short list of inputs. Consent coefficients. Numerical feedback indicating victory status. Psychological basis. When the government is able to collect tax and seize private property without just compensation, it is an indication that the public is ripe for surrender and is consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. A good and easily quantified indicator of harvest time is the number of public citizens who pay income tax despite an obvious lack of reciprocal or honest service from the government. Yeah, that kind of rings true today, doesn't it, chat? Doesn't it? Amplification energy sources. The next step in the process of designing an economic amplifier is discovering the energy sources. Energy sources which support any primitive economic system are, of course, a supply of raw materials, and the consent of the people to labor, and consequently assume a certain rank, position, level, or class in the social structure, i.e., to provide labor at various levels of the pecking order. This is called a Protestant work ethic in socialist documents. In each class, in guaranteeing its own level of income, controls the class immediately below it, hence preserves the class structure. This provides stability and security, but also government from the top. As time goes on and communication and education improve, the lower class elements of the social labor structure become knowledgeable and envious of the good things that the upper class members have. They also begin to attain the knowledge of energy systems and the ability to enforce their rise to the class structure. This threatens the sovereignty of the elite. If this rise of the lower classes can be postponed long enough, the elite can achieve energy dominance, and labor by consent no longer will hold a position of an essential energy source. Until such energy dominance is absolutely established, the consent of people to labor and let others handle their affairs must be taken into consideration, since failure to do so would cause the people to interfere in the final transfer of energy sources to the control of the elite. It is essential to recognize that at this time, public consent is still an essential key to the release of energy in the process of economic amplification. Therefore, consent as an energy release mechanism will now be considered. If you want to know how far that we've come in the 40 years since this was published, look at what happened in the Canadian trucker protest, or the Dutch trucker protest, or any of the other trucker protests that weren't reported on by the media, because there were an awful lot of them. You saw what happened. The government went in, they cancelled their bank accounts, they seized their money, they went to places like GoFundMe and so forth, and they said, hey, you're funding terrorists, or you're funding white supremacists, you have to give us all that money. And all of those organizations, except I think Give, Send, Go, I think Give, Send, Go stood by its principles in the Canadian trucker protest. All of those organizations immediately rolled over and said, yes, Daddy Government, we will give you all that we have. Please don't punish us. 1 second. My apple. I really like pink lady apples. They're delicious. I wonder if I get them in America. The successful application of a strategy requires a careful study of inputs, outputs, and strategy, connecting the inputs and the outputs and the available energy sources to fuel the strategy. This study is called logistics. A logistical problem is studied at the elementary level first, and then levels of greater complexity are added as a synthesis of elementary factors. Pardon my British. This means that a given system is analyzed, i.e., broken down into its subsystems, and those in turn are analyzed until by this process one arrives at the logistical atom, individual. Again, this is all about turning you and your free will into data for a computer to gobble up and spit out a decently accurate summary of what you're going to do next. This is where the process of synthesis okay, there is something wrong with my voice. I cannot say the word. Embarrassing. Synthesis properly begins at the time of birth of the individual. I read this last week, but I'm going to read it again because it is pretty devastating. The artificial womb. From the time a person leaves its mother's womb, its every effort is directed towards building, maintaining, and withdrawing into artificial wombs various sorts of substitute protective devices or shells. The objective of these artificial wombs is to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, to provide a shelter for the evolutionary processes of growth and maturity, i.e. survival, to provide shelter for freedom, and to provide defensive protection for offensive activity. As an Englishman would say, an Englishman's home is his castle. This is equally true of both the general public and the elite. However, there is a definite difference in the way each of these classes go about the solution of problems. I find it very funny how there's been an awful lot on Sam Bankman-Fried recently and his absolute gibberish that is effective altruism. Effective altruism really feels like an offshoot of this entire thing. You'll see this repeated throughout this document. It's the idea of, oh, people are horrible, people are terrible. Oh, wait, we're people too, but we're the good ones, so we can control people. It's this categorizing of people. Again, Thomas Sowell would call it like it's the vision of the anointed. There are the anointed and the benighted. You're definitely the benighted. The anointed are here to tell you how to live your life for you. The primary reason why the individual citizens of a country create a political structure is a subconscious wish or desire to perpetuate their own dependency relationship of childhood. Simply put, they want a human god to eliminate all risk from their life, pat them on the head, kiss their bruises, put the chicken on every dinner table, clothe their bodies, tuck them into bed at night, and tell them that everything will be all right when they wake up in the morning. This public demand is incredible, so the human god, the politician, meets incredibility with incredibility by promising the world and delivering nothing. So who is the bigger liar, the public or the godfather? This public behavior is surrender born of fear, laziness, and expediency. It is the basis of the welfare state as a strategic weapon, useful against a disgusting public. Look at this wording. Look at this wording. Useful against a disgusting public. I hadn't read this in several years before this stream, and I automatically started using words like they think you're disgusting. And then they say, in this very document, you're disgusting. You are a disgusting public. These 3 paragraphs are all you really need to know. These people hate you. They genuinely think you are disgusting. And they want to kill you. They can't put it in more plain and basic terms than this. Ghost is in the waiting room. Ah, yes. Actually, let me just check back. How much more of this is? Action. There isn't a huge amount, so I'll bring him on, okay. Here we go. Hello. I'm curious, do you have to... you do have to be on desktop. Okay, I think you're live now.
Testing? Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, cool.
Can everybody else in chat hear him? Have a drink of water, because I'm... Ugh. Ugh. Bit loud, but yeah, I'll just turn you down.
He's a
Maniacally,
bit loud. I don't get that one often.
it's probably just the fact that I have you at 100% audio level. You're now down to percent. Yeah, judging
Hopefully
by
that
how
makes a difference to the noble chatters, or the honorable chatters, or whatever they're called here.
yeah, honorable chatters. That's what Kirsty calls them. I haven't decided on a name for my flock of reprobates. But yeah, I'm very glad you could join us anyway. And I honestly would love to know, when did you first find this? How did you first come into contact with this document?
I read William Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse, and that's one of the chapters early on in the book. And the rest of the book goes a little bit off the rails, but I kind of took that chunk of gold and allowed the rest of it to go by the wayside, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
I can understand that. And one of the things that I'm very curious about, I've already mentioned Thomas Sowell multiple times, and also Anton Sutton. I'm curious, would you have any recommendations for people on further reading if they were curious?
uh, I think that the most important work that you could read if you were only to read one book by one of those people is Bolsheviks and Bankers by Anthony Sutton, because he kind of lays out in very plain terms the original founding purpose of the Bolshevik Party and why it was bankrolled.
Oh,
And the
yes.
story that it paints and the tale it tells. I think if you were only to read one of them, that's the one to read.
Yeah,
Um,
I would agree. It was a very good book that I enjoyed immensely. I think I've got a copy of it that I might paste in the Discord after this.
yeah. If somebody is a bit more in the know, so to speak, they might find the introduction to Skull and Bones, America's Secret Society by Sutton to be very interesting. But that's one of those. If you start somebody on that and they're not already sort of a knower, then they
Mm,
might think you're schizo. That is the risk that you take with that one. Whereas I think that uh, the book, the more historical tales are just that. They're a dry historical. I don't want to say bland because it's not bland, but it is very. It's exactly what it says on the tin. It's educational.
yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, is that sometimes these things are a bit hard. But again, if I like scroll back up here a bit, exactly. Yes. Where it says diversion summary, entertainment, keep the public entertained below a sixth grade level. So when you're talking about stuff like this, if if the kind of people that you're talking to have only ever been entertained to a sixth grade level, how are they going to keep their attention on anything?
Well, that's why you have to choose your target audience, so to speak.
Yeah.
For me, I like to talk about this sort of thing with the more educated demographic because think whatever you might about modern medicine, people who go through the rigors of medical school are, if nothing else, capable of retaining and regurgitating vast sums of information. And as such, if you can present them with an objective body of evidence, more often than not, they'll at least consider it.
Yeah, I agree.
Same is generally true of legal type people. Not
Mm.
always. A lot more. They have a lot more investment in the system, but
Well, it feels like
you know,
I'm not sure, like, you've been through the American education system.
tell me about it.
What consistently baffles me is the inability of modern people to basically cite sources or retain information on sources. It's like you'll see somebody who has obviously read a lot of stuff, and they even may have an understanding of it. But when it comes to regurgitating that knowledge, they don't say something like, "Oh, this intellectual here said that, and it's in this page of the book, or he wrote it in this book, or whatever." They will take it and they will turn it into like their own personal philosophy and say, "Well, I think, I know," and so on, and it devolves their argument completely down to a very personal level, and then they get extremely angry and mad when people just dismiss them as another voice in the chorus.
Yep. It's also a cool thing about if you bring up a source and people don't like your source, then you're sitting there playing source wars, and most people don't want to play source wars. They want to debate and feel like they're being heard. Um, I've run into this a fair few times with Sutton, where people will be like, I looked at his Wikipedia page and they said that he's a crackpot conspiracy theorist, so and so. And it's like, all right, well, you're not worth having this conversation with anyway, I suppose, but just the same.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Filled it for a second because I feel a sneeze and incredibly annoying. Second. There we go. Sorry about that. I really hate COVID. Have you ever had COVID, by the way?
I had it once, and the only reason why I distinguish it from any other illness is because it messed up my sense of taste, which sucked.
Yeah,
Um,
I had a really strange smell of acid in my nose for days. It's only just gone away, really.
ooh,
There's this weird kind of smell like you've just regurgitated stomach bile or something. It wasn't horrible, but it was just very weird, and it lasted for a long time. I've never had it from any other illness. But I'm one of the things that I'm shocked about this document is that like this is a training manual essentially. This is something that a person is supposed to read to understand a method of warfare or control, and it's supposed to be technical, and yet it can't go out of its way. It can't stop going out of its way to insult and belittle its targets. You can almost you can sense a level of hatred through it. I would say.
it's that's because its targets were never intended to be you and I. They were intended to be the few dozen people who were responsible for maintaining and running this system.
Yeah,
And the reason why it dehumanizes us to such a great degree is because it is ultimately for the purpose of, as this document began, it, they want us off the planet as soon as they can possibly achieve it.
yeah, like I
Um,
said in my first video, you are the carbon they want to reduce.
yeah, exactly. And as a result of this, or perhaps a logical extension of this, they cannot have the button pushers who are responsible enough to read this material harbor any sympathies, compassion, empathy, or anything for the subhumans that it's being used to control and eradicate.
Yeah, I understand that. I ranted about this quite a bit. I'm not sure how much of the last stream you caught, if anything, but like I ranted about it for quite some time. Is that these aren't people that are natural psychopaths, because a natural psychopath wouldn't need to write any of this. These aren't people that were born with no sense of empathy or anything like that. They were these people have an ability to relate to other people. They have an ability to connect to other people. They don't have an excuse, and yet
Mm-hmm.
these kind of documents are just written in a way that is just these people are. It's like these people are disgusting. We need to destroy them, or we need to control them for their own good. We have the moral right to do so, and it's self-reinforcing all the time. You would if this was clinical, I could understand it, but it's not even clinical. It's not. It doesn't even have the benefit of the banality of evil. It's just pure evil.
Mm-hmm. Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a very fair analysis of it. I think that it doesn't really drive at the heart of the absolute ridiculous theology that drives it, which is the belief that the intellect is the superior human virtue and that all of our civilization is derived through the intellect and that non-intellectual pursuits are not worth it. Because that's really how they establish the whole supremacy thing. It says in there fairly early on that anyone who does not use their intelligence to realize that they're being attacked by this weapon deserve the effects.
Yeah.
And that's not really, you know, that is the easiest way to dehumanize and depersonalize is to make them out to be inferior by virtue of something that's measurable and objective, so to speak.
Yeah, well, it's a predator
And I don't
prey
think that that's
dynamic.
true.
It's a predator prey
Yeah,
dynamic in that the predators they don't pick off the strong and healthy beasts of the herd. They pick off the weak and the stragglers or the children.
yeah. It's just easier that way. But I liken these people a lot less to a predator and a lot more to a parasite.
Hmm.
I don't think that this is a particularly. I don't think that these people have the capability to be predators. I think that they have the capability to steal and lie and connive and achieve by underhanded nature and duplicitous dealings, an undue amount of influence and civilization for themselves relative to what they deserve or what they contribute.
Yeah. Well, I think they're predators in the same way that crows or ravens are predators in that they don't actively try and hunt things down, but if they see something weak, then they have the cunning and the wile and the guile to track it down and almost toy with it until it's dead and then wait for it to rot and then just eat what's left.
Yeah, there's some of that, but I think that a lot of what this document is about is how to milk people, how to create and foster a dependent, loving civilization based upon these virtues that you can control and hold in the palm of your hand until you are ready to crush it.
Yeah.
I think that that's a lot less predator prey and a lot more. We are a parasite. You are a host. Please give us your minerals and nutrients.
Well, we gift you with the glorious wonder of our own intellects, which we naturally grateful and appreciative for.
Yeah,
So I
because we
think
are the only mature
yeah,
minds.
I think Zenlar wants to come in as well since he's in the waiting room. Mind if I let him on?
No, go for it. It's your
Okay.
stream.
I need a break to take a drink of water anyway. Hello, Zen.
Hello.
Greetings.
Excellent. This does actually work. I'm amazed. It's picked up your avatar as well.
My one input on this is that I'm reminded of a quote by our species' greatest philosopher. And it goes as such: the upper class keeps all the money, pays none of the taxes. The middle class pays all the taxes, does all the work. The poor are there just to scare the shit out of the middle class.
Yep. There's a lot of truth to that.
R.I.P. Carlin.
I don't know if I call him the greatest philosopher, but certainly he was the voice of the boomer generation.
Well, he was very good at observing and how do I put this? Making it digestible for the masses.
Yeah, exactly. I certainly do think that he had a claim to be, you know, of the people who were alive for me to witness, like, their decline and end. I think that George Carlin certainly was. He sort of defined the vulgar, perceptive comedy that still keeps it kosher. That like people like Louis C.K. have kind of like moved in and eaten his lunch, and they're not nearly so good at it, of course. But
Well, yeah, like Carlin was the original shock jock, and he couldn't be a broadcast shock jock. He had to circumvent the FCC by actually putting out, records.
yeah, and in terms of like the race to the bottom culturally, I think that George Carlin would be none short of like appalled at how banal and trite his actors had become.
Well, yeah, because if anyone who watches his later specials, it's just like, I've been saying this since like the 60s and 70s. I'm tired of this shit. Fuck you all.
Yep. My mother didn't like him much because she said, and I quote, "He's just too bitter. He became too bitter by the end." And it's
Yeah,
like,
I
well,
shared that.
yeah, you sort of weren't really paying attention much to what he was saying because he explained how that all came to be.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I think that certainly in terms of making it digestible, he was one of the greats of the last generation.
Well, yeah, like I would frequently have human nature, economic arguments with my mother, and she would usually give pushback until I said, like, "Mom, let me just put it to you this way," and I would just throw it like a Carlin idiom kind of thing stuff, and then be like, "Oh yeah, he did say that." It's like you watched him, but you weren't paying attention.
Or they just didn't comprehend the full implications of what it was that he was on about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just thought that with Carlin, I haven't watched a great deal of his stuff, but he very strongly gave me a vibe that an awful lot of people like him give off, in that he feels like a Cassandra almost. That it started off as an act, and then as it goes further and further along, you realize it's not really an act. That this feels like a man who is standing up there and screaming as loudly as he possibly can in the only way that he really knows how, towards an audience that is is rapidly approaching a point where they are psychologically incapable of seeing him as anything other than a comedian.
A better
Yep.
analogy I would give would be Benjamin from Animal Farm.
Yeah, I agree there.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's the tragic part about all of this, is that you can't talk about this kind of stuff to an awful lot of people, and it's not because they can't understand it. It's that you're speaking a different language than them. They have the the brain power, but it's been twisted and focused. It's like on a different operating system, or that you can't make a connection. The file types are incompatible, even though if you put them up on the same images, you'd get the same image from each file, but without the ability to decrypt it into the other person's language, it just doesn't work.
Yep, this is why Newspeak is such a prominent ideal within the systems that try to study fascism, because all fascists rely on Newspeak. They rely upon people not having the same definitions of terms that should be simple and straightforward. They rely on that ambiguity, the ability to create double and triple meanings.
Well, language speaks to the mind, and the mind is reality, effectively.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. And I see that in no greater case than my own mother, who is an extremely intelligent person, but who is also very kind of she would be, if she had politics, and she doesn't for various reasons, but if she did, then she would be pretty classically left liberal leaning. And because we've spent the last 30 years in a very peaceful, very pleasant, uh, well, very homogenous country and a very homogenous
White.
culture. I wasn't going to say that. That's on you.
I know you weren't going to say it. That's why I had to say it.
But
if you would have done that heavy lifting.
Yeah, I try to talk to her about these modern issues and these modern problems, and it's almost impossible to convey to her. She understands on an intellectual level the kind of stuff that I talk about, but it's almost impossible to explain how the definitions of things have changed. Like, to say to her that, a man is no longer a man, a woman is no longer a woman in the eyes of these politics, when she knows them as, that she knows liberalism as the kind that championed for the rights of women to be women, as opposed to just live up to the standards that men set for them. Now I say, well, yeah, that's kind of the opposite now. Now it's men setting the standards, but they're calling themselves women, and so, like, you can't explain these things to somebody who isn't mired in this nonsense already. And if they're mired in this nonsense, then it probably means they've already been indoctrinated and corrupted to it.
Well, this is what brings my piss to a boil. People will say, like, oh, slippery slope fallacy, but I refer to slippery slope by its original meaning, which is death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah, anybody that still believes that that's a fallacy at this point is smoking copium. Copious amounts of copium.
The world supply of copium, if you will.
Yeah. They redefine what it is to cope about an issue.
That's now a deeply racist and white supremacist term coping. Like with cow's milk, you're a racist and you're a white supremacist. Cow's milk.
Unpasteurized milk at that. Ooh.
Oh dear. I think I read just yesterday. I was watching a video that how they, like in the Disney movie Pocahontas, they went back. There's the like the song where all the colonists are gearing up into a frenzy to go and murder all the tribals, and
Yeah,
they
yeah, the Savage song.
yeah Disney changed the lyrics of that, and I think
I saw.
they changed I think they changed the "Savages barely even human" line to "This is what happens when the races are diverse." And I just...
Yeah. Yeah. What else?
No one dig up Disney's corpse and ask him his opinion on the colors.
No, please do. Do not let them erase history.
No, I'm with you on that there, but it's just the thought.
Yeah, I know. I'm memeing for the most part.
Yeah.
But I'm going to turn my attention back to this for a second, because let me just have a quick look at the draft. This might be a rather interesting one, because we've seen how in the last few years the military has gone from very much a right-leaning organization to one that is completely ideologically subverted. And I find it fascinating how, from my own studies of history, one of the things that I was quite interested in for a long time was the Middle Eastern militaries, particularly times like the Iran-Iraq War, because if it wasn't the slaughter of thousands and thousands of people by the most horrific means imaginable, it would be a laugh-along comedy for the entire family, reading about the activities of the Iranian and the Iraqi armies. You had stuff like officers or artillery batteries who would shell the same empty patch of desert for 24 hours straight because none of the officers told them to stop shooting, and they knew the first person to stop shooting would be held up on treason charges and shot. And
Or dialing up a sniper scope to the maximum setting, thinking they would shoot better.
yeah, that kind of stuff was more ignorance than ideology. But I read a paper once on why Arabs don't make good military officers and why their culture is just fundamentally opposed to the idea of organized armies to begin with. And it is all about this idea that the people in charge are well aware that the people with guns are the ones that decide who is in charge. So they have to simultaneously create a military that functions to deter other militaries from destroying them, but which also is not enough of a threat that it doesn't turn around and say, "We don't like you, somebody else has promised to give us more pay, you're gone." And I see a very similar pattern happening in the US military right now.
Well, you know what they say. When you import the third world, you import the third world's problems.
Yeah. There's a couple of third world people who are in the U.S. military, and they are probably the stupidest people I have ever seen in my entire life.
Well, you have to look at immigration, like first-gen immigrants from like back in the day. As soon as they got in, they realized all the idiots are back home are going to eventually figure it out. So they tried to do their best to pull up the ladder behind them, but unfortunately, didn't exactly pan out.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's this balancing act going on, is that how do we, or the elites that is, how do we make things so that we have control, but at the same time we don't give anybody else the tools to use to exert control the same way we have. It's why you have gurus like Andrew Tate and so on being so immensely popular, because the trouble is, once you dumb down a population to the point where everybody is stupid enough to listen to your propaganda, guess what? Other groups can give their own propaganda just as easily, and people, it's not an optional thing. Once somebody has been propagandized into believing whatever authority figure is on the screen, then there's going to be a natural competition to see who can be the authority figure on the screen.
Or you have the idiots, where you have people making a joke out of it, and then eventually people come in thinking they're among peers, and they're like, "Oh, you're being serious." Shit.
Yeah, I have to deal with that quite a lot, honestly.
I don't envy you for that.
I mean, just look at the forum. We've had 2 or 3 like drive-bys of that, like people coming on and thinking, "Oh, great, this is a place that I can go to, like trash the company that I don't like." Me having to ban them because they don't understand that there's actual nuance.
I like the last guy. He actually unified the forum for Ninja Sanji.
I
That was
know, I
hilarious.
know. That was pretty beautiful. I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Scuttle shed a tear that day.
Apparently, Scuttle has quit VTubers pretty much, which is a real shame.
Nah, he always comes back. Just give it a bit. He's gone like a million times, but he always comes back.
Yeah, I envy people like that. In fact, I've got a question for you, Zenla. Like, how did you get into VTubers? How on earth did a Canadian geologist get into VTubers?
Uh, Long story short, I got laid off in 2020, and I had a lot of free time on my hands, and Corone's Ekum Bokum was making the rounds,
Uh,
and it's been just downhill ever since.
oh dear. Oh no. Poor man.
Yeah, it's been fun. I've met a lot of. I'm kind of with Jim. I'm not big on online friends, but I've met some online associates, which I'm happy with.
Yeah. This is it's another thing that's bothered me is that I've seen a great deal of infiltration of spaces like VTubing in the last few years. I think I've ranted on it on stream before, but it's like with tabletop RPG. I can't go to any tabletop RPG Discord aside from a single one that I'm in where there aren't pronoun roles, there aren't flag roles, and half the conversation is how orcs are racist. And it's such NPC talk. You could really, in fact, there's the dead internet theory. I should look into the dead internet theory sometime. I know there was a thing on the forums about it, but it astonishes me. It's like with let me just segue a tangent a bit on SFO, like a short fat otaku. I knew that guy in like 2010 or something when he was talking like the Gamergate stuff, and I vaguely was aware.
Can we not tangent to that idiot? He just brings my piss to a boil because
oh yeah, I won't talk about him much, but I just want to say that I read about him on KF like years and years and years ago, and then I put him out of my head. And like he's into politics and so on, and doesn't I was like, okay, I'll never think about this guy again. And then randomly, I become a major fan of Kirshi, and then a few months after I start watching Kirshi, she has a bunch of drama with SFO.
no, I was there. I was there live in chat, yelling with a couple other guys, saying, "Do not deal with this guy. Abort, abort, disavow, abort. You're going to thank us later." But she got Lulbertarian, and it's like, no, everyone deserves a chance. Let him speak his piece. I love Kirshia, but she has Lulbert tendencies that unfortunately they're also filtered with women tendencies. So it's just like, we've been through this. Learn from history. Take our word for it. We'll explain more later. But it's like, nope, just go all tits in, and we saw how that panned out.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but like SFO, nobody. He gets no real attention. He has a dedicated core of people that are just about as worthless and useless as he is, and that's about it. And everybody makes fun of him, and yet somehow these people just keep popping up. It doesn't matter where you go on the internet. And I remember just a year or so ago, I met a guy that I used to know about 10 years ago under the comments of a random YouTube video that we both happened to watch. And that wasn't even something that was in my feed or anything. It wasn't even a particularly popular video. I think it was a game review, something that had less than 1,000 views, and he was just in the comments. And I was like, "There's no way that I know this person. How do I know this person?" It's like when Elon Musk bought Twitter and went on a rant about bots and everything. I really do want to know how much of the internet is just bots talking back and forth to each other, because I think that it's a terrifyingly high proportion on it.
No, the easiest way to think about the bot problem is I'll frame it in something you guys can probably appreciate. How many bots are there in finance?
Huh.
It's same deal. because social media is now finance because it is a resource.
Hmm. Oh, sorry, just taking a bite of my apple.
Yummy.
Oh yeah, I really love pink lady apples. They're gorgeous.
I'm a heretic. I like red delicious.
Oh, you poor man. Sorry for
I,
you.
I know, I know.
VTubers and the lockdown have been a disaster for the weeaboo race. I really do wonder what VTubing would look like if COVID hadn't happened. That would be an alternate universe I'd be fascinated by.
No, we still be on the same timeline. It would just have taken longer for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with you. I don't think things would be as parasocial as they are right now.
Oh no, that was always going to be the case.
Well, it was always going to be a case because there's a terrifying number of in the Philippines and Indonesia and so on into VTube.
Well, the empty egg carton meme has been making the rounds, and yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it is very depressing sometimes. I mean,
Well, you have to.
As Kirshi says, there's hope for everybody.
Well, yeah, but you have to remember, men have been disincentivized for the family unit, and so have women. Both modus operandi for both sexes has been a thing, and we are seeing the ongoing fallout of that.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to read this part where it's talking about enforcement. And let's do this second. Yes, to secure the draft, individual brainwashing/programming and both the family unit and the peer group must be engaged and brought under control. Factor 2, father. The man of the household must be housebroken to ensure that Junior will grow up with the right social training and attitudes. Advertising media, etc. are engaged to see to it that father-to-be is pussy-whipped before the time he is married. He is taught that he either conforms to the social notch cut out for him, or his sex life will be hobbled, and his tender companionship will be zero. He is made to see that women demand security more than logical principle or honorable behavior. By the time his son must go to war, father, with jelly for a backbone, will slam a gun into Junior's hand before father will risk the censure of his peers, or make a hypocrite of himself by crossing the investment he has in his own he has in his own personal opinion or self-esteem. Junior will go to war, or father will be embarrassed, so Junior will go to war, the true purpose notwithstanding. First part of this is just a little bit prophetic, I feel.
If it wasn't for the absolute state of the military, yeah, I just don't think that you could use those same forces to, send a child off to war any longer. I really don't.
Yeah, they've made a very concerted effort to hit on conservative right and all that stuff, which is the army and the military and all that. And they've been hammered for so long, they're just tapping out. Like with the MGTOW thing for men, you're also seeing that in the military. It's like, okay, we're not appreciated. No one likes us. We're hated. You know what? Fuck it. We're out. Peace.
I love how this document, it gets more mask off as you read further, and like now we're nearly at the end. Like the mask offness is absolutely unparalleled. I'm going to continue reading this. This is hilarious, hilariously horrifying. Factor 3, the mother. The female element of human society is ruled by emotion first and logic second. In the battle between logic and imagination, imagination always wins. Fantasy prevails, maternal instinct dominates, so that the child comes first and the future comes second. A woman with a newborn baby is too starry-eyed to see a wealthy man's cannon fodder or a cheap source of slave labor. A woman must, however, be conditioned to accept the transition to reality when it comes, or sooner. As the transition becomes more difficult to manage, the family unit must be carefully disintegrated, and state-controlled public education and state-operated childcare centers must become more common and legally enforced, so as to begin the detachment of the child from the mother and father at an earlier age. Inoculation of behavioral drugs, aka Ritalin, can speed the transition from the child. Mandatory. Caution. A woman's impulsive anger can override her fear. An irate woman's power must never be underestimated, and her power over a pussy-whipped husband must likewise never be underestimated. It got women the vote in 1920.
Well, we can just reference back the temperance movement. That was all women just being like, fuck you, we're getting rid of booze.
In fairness to women of the day, holy smokes did men back in the day drink.
Yeah.
Holy smoke.
Better than water in some cases.
Yeah, I think that in the 18th century, the rum ration for Navy personnel was 2 gallons every day.
Yeah. In America, from what I understand, at the end of the Civil War, the average individual drank 750 milliliters of liquor, or its equivalent, per week.
Ooh.
That's insane. And that's including children up or over the age of 10, I believe. So,
Ooh, and that's a statistical average, so you're going to see massive outliers to that.
yeah, and there were also plenty of outliers that didn't drink, that were teetotalers. And those people don't count for anything. Those skew down the average.
Yeah, yeah.
So factor that accordingly.
And you have to remember the Civil War initiated a nationwide PTSD effectively. And that's how people dealt.
Well, yeah, I mean, end of the Great American Republic kind of hit everybody differently.
Oh, pardon me. It's pretty strange to me, really, listening to Americans talk about this kind of thing, because it's insight into a world that I just don't have a natural connection to.
Well, in my case, as a Canadian,
Yeah,
my
you're
mother grew up in the
States.
Well, yeah, but my mom grew up in the States, and I knew more about American history just because I enjoyed history, period. And it just so happens American history was a major factor because, main trading partner, shared history and all that jazz and stuff. But me knowing more about American history and my mother kind of made me a little depressed at times.
Yeah, I bet.
Mm.
Because same.
And she didn't know shit about Canadian history. That was just like, no.
Oh, Canadian history is that, everything was fine and wonderful until white people came along and did evil, horrible things, and then the Catholics came over and they murdered thousands and thousands, no, millions and millions of children, and definitely billions of, adorable little colored boys. And now it's your job to pay reparations for it all. Come on, open your bank account.
I disavow all of that there. I'm a Canadian. We made love, not war. Why do you think we have so many Métis?
I feel very sorry for Canadians, genuinely, that they have been dealt a horrible hand in life.
No, we have no one to blame but ourselves.
Yeah.
True, but that doesn't make it any better there.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Sorry, you go on.
Yeah, so just a little side tangent. I trained a lot of students straight out of school for geology and stuff, and we would have talks and whatnot. And I saw the indoctrination system develop in real time, just from each new batch every year of students I had to train up. And oh god, it got bad.
Oh yeah, I was present for my my high school's founding of their Gay Straight Alliance, which started as a place where disaffected youth whose families couldn't afford therapy would basically send them once a week to bitch about their problems. And it turned into this horrible politicized bullshit. It kind of happened in increments because once the original curators fell away from it, it got taken over just by whoever wanted it, which was obviously an insane ideologue. So, sort of the natural progression of things. But
rules are radical, co-opt.
Yeah. And, rules for evil is that you basically cannot be creative. Evil has no creativity whatsoever.
No.
This is true, but I believe Proctor has an opinion now.
You know me too well. Yeah, I actually, honestly, what I was thinking of is what to read next, because I want to continue reading stuff like this. And the advantage of this is that it's only been 45 pages, and a lot of it is very dry statistical analysis. And I've only really been reading the juicy bits. But I'm curious if either of you have anything else that I could read. I think would be interesting.
I made the comment earlier. I'm a big fan of Mises' economic theory, and he does touch on some of this, but more focus on economics, like pure economics. But he's a good dude.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
for anyone in chat, Ludwig von Mises.
can send it in the Discord as well. I do have a bunch of books that I downloaded. Content. Yeah, I really love the bell curve. That's one of those books that was kind of almost banned at one point because it says very direct and statistically backed things about IQs. I think backs up a lot of what I said earlier because I commented that an awful lot of people, an awful lot of children will test as genius level IQ before they go into school and then come out basically far stupider than when they went in.
Yeah, well, what can you do? Can't keep education at a 6th grade level if people are curious, so.
I've been called out by maniacal foreigner. It's Mises.
Oh, that is a strange name. That's the problem with these names. You go to America and you immediately get bombarded by names that have been filtered through a cultural diaspora of about 70 different cultures.
Well, to be fair, he's Austrian, hence the Austrian school, which he founded.
Another book that I really like is The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America.
That's a good one, but have fun reading all 800 pages of that on stream.
Yeah, it is 800 pages. I would definitely need like a Cliff Notes version of that. It is an excellent book that I quite enjoy. Though admittedly, even I haven't read every single bit of it.
I have. It's a good book.
There are some meaty bits, but some of the older PSYOP field manuals from the Army are pretty good too.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Another thing that I would really like to read, because personally, because it's so beautifully written, is is Adam Smith's The Theory of Moral Sentiments. That's almost I remember reading quite a bit of this out of pure like pleasure for the text. Beautifully written. It massively illustrates how much literacy has declined in the past several generations.
Actually, it did come to me. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think I might have read it a while back.
Yeah, it's a really, really beautifully. I find it kind of funny that we're told to read Shakespeare and so on in school, but people forget that Shakespeare was practically the George Carlin of his day. Really, he was considered to be really parochial and really undereducated and uninteresting.
Well, he literally did his plays in vulgar English.
Yeah, that's my point. He was like plays for the common man.
And they were very biting commentary on the points of his day. Like when I studied Shakespeare in high school, my English teacher made it a point of like, here's the historical context for these plays we're reading.
That's really good. I'm guessing that doesn't happen any longer.
No,
it does,
no.
But most people don't care. You know, the teacher will talk and prattle all of that nonsense, and the student will just sit there and not really care. What takes forever in those is reading them in class. I had a teacher in high school who insisted that we read Hamlet, and it took so freaking long. And it was very painful to listen to some of the lobotomites try to sound out Shakespeare. It just was not pleasant.
That must have been hilarious.
We had
It wasn't.
Midsummer's
There was
Night
nothing
Dream.
funny about it. And then the thing is, the bit that was funny was that came as a glorious relief because prior to that we'd been reading Madame Bovary, which is possibly I don't like French lit, so Gustave Flaubert, eat your heart out.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Yeah, all of this stuff sounds like would have been a wonderful spectator sport, a fly on the wall kind of thing.
Nah, believe you me, you would not have enjoyed it. It's like it sounds funny because you never had to experience anything like it. But if you were actually there for, 40 minutes of your day every single day for 180 days of the year, you'd want to start going postal. You would understand all of the, why are American school shooting galleries memes? Like it would become all too real to you.
Oh yeah, that's another thing that amazed. See how society is just cracking apart because of the way that education is, and people seem to just have completely forgotten that the way that society worked for generation upon generation, that parents educated children, that was considered acceptable. Somehow the world didn't end.
Actually, Strimmer, people back in those days were considerably stupider, even though if you look at the writing samples from people in the 19th century, the average person nowadays can't even comprehend what they're talking about.
Yeah. There was something that I read years ago that was it was literally the equivalent of like a was some guy out in the Midwest who was a literal farmer who wrote a letter to a paper. It was some kind of advertisement. He was advertising for a wife. That was what he was doing. He was literally advertising for a wife.
I remember this.
Yeah, because he was lonely. And like his prose and his writing is, I would say, postgraduate level. Like there were people who legitimately, like I used to do writing for something online. I won't reveal too much, but I had to at one point study over 500 applicants for that job when it got big enough that they needed a second person. And of all those 500 people, some of whom had studied English like in college or postgraduate level, none of them were able to write as much as this random farmer could in his literal ad for a waifu in a local
WTB
paper.
waifu.
And I just look at this stuff and I think, where the hell did all of this go? What? Not only is it gone, people are actively disgusted and offended by the idea of sophisticated literature. They cherish their ignorance and they think that it's a badge of honor.
Well, yeah, because if you can create an intellectual vacuum in the culture, most people aren't going to look for things outside of the culture. They're going to just do what everyone else is doing. They're going to follow the current thing. So if you make the current thing, gangster rap and work 50 hours and don't read, don't indulge any of your natural curiosities, what incentive does the average person have to not do that?
And that tall nail is going to get hammered, by golly.
Yeah, that's a well. Looking at chat. Ah, yes, the most grueling experience in school, having the quarterback try and read out loud and not tear out your hair in the process.
So I went to school. I graduated 2014, so I was always in like honors and advanced placement classes and whatever else have you. And you could tell the second that somebody in those classes opened their mouths whether or not they actually belonged there. Because if they read like a lobotomite, no inflection or the wrong inflection and just like no real reading comprehension evidence, you knew they didn't belong there. It was the same thing if they got called up to the whiteboard in calculus and they couldn't do any of it.
I have
And
a
the
funny
parents,
anecdote for that too.
Sure.
So in my geology class, there wasn't that many of us because it was a small university. Now there were a lot of keeners. They were very smart. They worked hard. However,
what is
I
that
was
exactly? Explain that for somebody who's not American or Canadian.
What, a keener? Enthusiastic, bookworm, teacher kiss ass. Try hard is probably the best word. Okay, so I was not one of those. I was a mouth breathing idiot, and I had a bunch of mouth breathing idiot friends that I made very quickly in that class.
You're into
Here's
VTubers.
Yes. So here's the kicker. Me and Team Idiot, we got the highest marks in class. We finished our labs first. Uh, w- Honestly, like we finished our tests first. We just breezed through everything. And I shit you not, one of my friends, probably the earliest instance of this I saw, one of the keeners in class was bitching at us. It's like, why do you guys finish your stuff so fast, and why do you guys get high marks? And my friend, without missing a beat, skill issue.
I'm
I,
very
I
I
proud of
don't
wish
have.
that
I went to
friend.
school in the skill issue days. There would have been so many times where I used to be somewhat chubby as a kid. So just the image of my fat self, like, smarting off to somebody who wants to punch me in the face but knows it's not a good idea. Just telling them that it's a skill issue would have been so much damn fun.
No, well, here's the kicker. We were all, without fail, big guys, and one of us was on the university football team. He was a fucking
Oh,
brick.
so they wanted to, like, do some intellectual discrimination against you.
No, we would just sit back in class and be chuckle fucks. We were literally the chuckle fucks, but we excelled because we got the material. And I remember my introductory, I initially went to university on a biology scholarship, and I was going to go into biochem pharmacy, but I took
Mm,
geology as an elective, and it was like a come to God moment. It's like, oh my God, this is
I
it.
really like this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and my intro
good for
prof
you.
and my intro prof ended up being my honors thesis supervisor, and he was a proud newfie, but you couldn't tell. But he was a proud, smart
Mm,
newfie, and he taught the class. Here's how he marked his test. He would mark you. He would deduct points for every word in the answer. If you can't answer it with one word, you don't understand.
I would have
No,
gotten
he
very low marks in that class. I'm terminally verbose with my answers, you can probably tell.
no, he had no patience for both, like being verbose. Like,
yeah, it's
it,
really annoying.
yeah,
If
like
you have somebody in your chat or in your class who just like incessantly writes all the time, you have to grade like 50 or 60 things, and theirs is going to take you 30 minutes. You're going to drink while you do it. Anyways.
well, yeah. The sink or swim mentality is. I have to toot my discipline. Like geology is like either you get it or you don't. Like this is
Hmm.
rock. This is rock science, not rocket science.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is just that there were. I took a geology. It was geology and meteorology, um, and it was a very binary class. Really interesting labs too. They actually like wanted us to go outside and touch grass and shit. Wild.
Well, yeah, that was a bunch of our labs too, especially when it came to like mapping or surveying or actually doing the work. Like
I bet.
honestly, my job for like the last like 20 odd years has been like effectively 2 or 3 labs in university. Those 2 or 3
Mm.
labs was effectively my job going forward for the rest of my life.
Did you know that when you were doing the labs, or
Oh fuck, God no.
But you push towards any particular career besides geology?
No, I kind of figured it early on. Like in the discipline, you effectively have there's 2 ways to make money. You can go hard rock, which is mining, or soft rock, which is oil and gas. And I found out very early on I did not have the patience for oil and gas, so I went with the nice shiny rocks, and that's how I've been since.
That's pretty nice, honestly. It's I definitely approve of that profession. Honestly, we like that.
Well, I was always going into science, and it just so happened to end up in the roughneck science of them all. Like geologists are the Earth's first alcohol-based life form, and no one can convince me otherwise. No, I'm not kidding. My field school, we were all drunk all the time. It was insane.
There must be something. I would really love to talk to a neuroscientist and ask them why is it that some relatively high level professions can function on massive amounts of alcohol, but with other ones of seemingly arbitrary distinction, have one drink and you can't function any
yeah, I agree. We should just let all CDLs get drunk on the job. Anyways,
longer.
thank you for coming to my seminar on how to make more work for claims adjusters.
I definitely need you to get you on here again sometimes when we talk about economics. You have a vastly greater understanding of the ideas.
Well, I went to school for it, so
Yeah. Although from everything that I've read about economics, it's more like the school is there not so much to teach you all the things you can't learn outside of the school, but to teach you all of the useless things you were taught outside of school you don't actually need.
yeah.
Well,
But
that's just education in a nutshell.
Yeah, I would agree with you, tragically.
Like here's my rant on education. Like you do need it for certain things, but here's my real opinion on it. It gives you a baseline to understand what you're looking at. Like for example, I don't know shit, but I know what to look for in Google. No, I'm not kidding. That's literally how it is.
I'm not.
And I've talked about I
I'm not dismissing that. I'm a lot of the laughter, a lot of the laughing here is not dismissive. It's just kind of,
coping.
I know this, but I'm just amused by finding somebody else who knows it too.
Well, yeah, like I do have other friends in like high level professions. Like I know a bunch of engineers and stuff like that there, and they're all of the same opinion. That's just how things work. And they don't teach you that because they wouldn't be able to get their money in university. That's university wouldn't be able to make their money if they taught
What a shock!
taught you reality. Yeah, I know.
It's why I
the
have
problem with fetishizing education.
I have a great deal of respect for people like Lewis Rossman, who is so dedicated to free and open source stuff and dedicated to teaching people how to do things. As it takes a very special kind of person to gain knowledge and want to pass that knowledge on in a way that may potentially damage their own business in the process.
Well, Lewis is old school. He's self-taught, and he has the same mentality as me because when I learn something, I write it down, and anytime I had to train someone new, it's like here's my procedure I wrote for myself. You can review it on your own time.
Yeah, very wise way of going about things. Well, anyway, I am starting to feel my throat go a little bit, and also I've just realized that I am starting to get extremely hungry. I have a very nice pizza waiting indoor. So, unless anybody has any closing thoughts, I think we can end our impromptu but genuinely very fun little podcast experience here for now.
Always good to be on.
Yeah.
You just had an apple. How are you hungry already, etc.?
Well, I haven't had
Anyways.
any. I have literally not had anything else besides this apple all day.
Sounds like an excuse to me.
Well, it's because of COVID. Like COVID has really messed with my appetite in a very strange way. Like I can go for hours and hours and hours without the slightest bit of a hunger pang. Even the thought of food will disgust me, and then suddenly I'll realize, wait, it's been like 18 hours since I last had a bite to eat.
Yeah, I've done that before, but even without COVID. My brain is either on food or it isn't.
Yeah, it
But
seems to be maybe it's rewired my brain a bit to more classically autistic traits. I've also felt I used to drink like 4 or 5 cups of coffee every day. I've not had a cup of coffee in like a week or so. I just don't. This is something about it that has completely stopped registering as appealing to me. I don't want coffee at all. I've got completely cold turkey off it.
Go for it.
All right. Well, it was good chatting with you guys.
Yep. I'm very grateful that people feel like I'm worthy of listening to and relating people in this topic. Like I don't want to monopolize this in a way. I think that both of you are very interesting and it's always fascinating perspectives on everything. It's nice to, especially with people like you, Zenla, talk to people who are drawn to a very traditionally kind of weebish hobby while also being a successful and independent person as stuff worth talking to aside from, what they last fapped to on an image board.
Well, since I've started shitpost streaming, there's only one thing I have to say. Hey, chat, I cracked the code on how to deal with streamers. You have to treat streamers as chat GPT. You need to give them prompts in chat, and then the content will flow.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I'm not surprised that these streams haven't been particularly popular because it's a very esoteric subject. I mean, I'm very glad that I did this. A lot better about it.
Yeah, same.
Yep. Right, anyway.
Yeah, but anybody who isn't prepared for esoterica with you is setting themselves up for
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
deep-seated confusion.
I refuse to be conformist in my... So I have been thinking about doing something like maybe... I've been really interested in playing Getting Over It on stream. I might do that because it's like the typical streamer game, but I think I'd actually be... I've never played a game like that before, but from everything else that I've seen people play of it, it's not going to be that hard.
I want to watch.
Same.
I'll make sure that I'm available because I definitely want to watch that.
Yeah, I also thought about Jump King, but Jump King is a little bit too much of a rage game for me, I think. I very quickly get...
Getting Over It is the right brand of philosophical nonsense game for you. Like, you're going to actually enjoy listening to him faff around vocally.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a couple of interesting arguments. I don't think I've ever seen a streamer who actually listens and responds to that kind of stuff. They all have that narration just off for talk about it. So I'm like,
yeah, exactly. I think that you specifically will find yourself listening to and being entertained by that.
Yeah, that'd be
and
cool.
that's what I'm interested in just as much as watching you fail to get through the lanterns.
Oh dear. Weekly schedule, nice. I can think of a schedule. The trouble is, I'm a pretty chaotic person, so I kind of stream.
The idea of you keeping a schedule is hilarious.
Yeah, yeah, that's a major problem I've always had. Mind you, I've managed to keep, like, apart from like being late for a minute or two, I managed to keep everything that I've put in this. So, we'll see. We'll see.
I've made peace with just giving like a heads up. It's like, all right, in a few hours, I'm going to do this. If you want to, great. Don't, okay, whatever.
Yeah, a few hours minimum is what I try and aim for. Anyway, as I said, I'll see you all later. Thank you very much.
All right, later.
Toodaloo.
All right, bye, and thank you once again.